Hello, and welcome to the Being Human podcast, where we explore what it means to be human, physically, mentally, and spiritually. We upload an episode of this podcast every single week, so if you're new here, or especially if you're returning and you have not yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You do not want to miss any of these episodes. On this episode of the podcast, I sat down with Noah Ryan. Noah is a fantastic guy. I really love Noah's insights on everything from mobility to productivity to nomad living. We covered so many topics in this conversation. Noah is a marketer, a writer, a health researcher. He helps health brands grow their business. He really is a jack of all trades, something which he talks about, the pros of being a generalist in the world today rather than a specialist. He's got many strings to his bow. He's got a whole load of experience for somebody his age. He's the same age as me at 25, 26 years old. This was a great conversation. I learned a whole lot. I really enjoyed discussing ideas with him. And I suppose the overarching theme of this conversation was about how young men in the world today can really maximize their life, maximize their vitality, their productivity, and live the best lives that they can, taking advantage of all the skills, all the tools, opportunities at their disposal. I hope you enjoy this conversation. If you do, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment below, share it around on social media, and hit that subscribe button too. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to hit that follow button and rate the show 5 stars. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting Being Human. The Being Human podcast is brought to you by Ra Optics. These are the best blue blocker glasses on the market. I use these daylight lenses when I'm doing my work throughout the day to keep me energized, to eliminate eye strain, headaches, and mood imbalances. And then I use these sunset lenses in the evening to really help me block out that blue light, wind down, and get a good night's rest. Ra Optics are effective and stylish. I wear these to work, I wear these out to dinner. They really are fantastic. There's a whole range of different styles for you to shop to find something that suits you. All you need to do to pick up a set of these is to head to raoptics.com and use the code WAGLELE to get 10% off your order. That's Ra Optics, ARoptics.com, and use the code WAGLELE, WAGLELE, all caps, to get 10% off your order. The Being Human podcast is brought to you by Mr. Bassett's Grappler's Coffee and Mr. Bassett's Grappler Soap. Mr. Bassett's brings you quality, natural goods that are going to nourish you, not harm you. Grappler Soap is the soap to use if you're a combat sports athlete to fight off those skin infections, keep them at bay, and stay smelling fresh for your training partners. And Grappler's Coffee is the coffee to get you caffeinated so you can continue to wrist lock, punch choke, and oil check your training partners into oblivion. All you need to do to pick up these goods is to head to MrBassett.com and use the code WAG10 to get 10% off your order. That's MrBassett.com, WAG, all caps, 10 to get 10% off your order. And now presenting Being Human with Noah Ryan.
The first question I want to ask you, because I think this is an interesting question for people like yourself in this day and age. When somebody who doesn't know what you do asks you, what do you do? What do you say to them? Because back in the day, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I work at this place, I work at that. It's a not so simple question to ask for somebody like yourself. What do you say?
It's funny. I say marketing because I am a marketer, and it's really the only thing that people understand. Like, I used to sometimes say, like, "Oh, I write." My girlfriend hates that because she's like, "People think you write like novels." But yeah, marketing is really what I say. You can't begin to explain the attention economy to people. You can't begin to explain kind of the new, like, anybody that's older than a millennial won't understand like the digital marketplace and the digital economy. They don't understand that most people in our positions have like 4 different income streams. They have 4 different businesses or projects that they're working on. So I say marketing in the health space.
Okay, cool. And how did you come to do what you do now? I suppose it could be helpful to kind of explain to people in a bit more detail. Obviously, you said it's such a nuanced question, and it's a whole thing to go into everything that you do for a living. But how did you come to live the life that you do?
Yeah. And for clarification on what I do, I say marketing because that's what people understand. What I really like do and what I focus on is independent health research. I'd say that, and then finding ways to package it and explain it to people. That's what I love. That's what I do. I sat down before this year, and I was really like, what is my objective? I really wasn't feeling it passion-wise with a lot of the projects I was on. I was like, okay, the one thing that really gets me going is independent health research. And that's just a fancy way of saying doing stuff, experimenting with stuff, researching stuff, and then writing it down in a way that doesn't sound like a nerd. In terms of how I got into it, my background, I guess my professional background, it's in like tech marketing. Marketing degree, not that that means much. Started and failed a few businesses in college, started a business in high school. Once I did that, selling a product, I was like, it's going to be really hard for me to get a job, especially with my ADHD. So, started from that angle. When it comes to the health stuff, which is like really what I love and really what I do, marketing is just the backbone that makes it feasible. That started from just being really unhealthy. My childhood, I struggled. I had seasonal depression and I was on SSRIs for like 7 years. And then that wasn't really even the problem, because the SSRIs is going to make it where it's not that big of a deal. The problem was the issues that I got from those SSRIs. The SSRIs completely one-shotted my pleasure pathways, my ability to feel joy, my ability to feel elated, euphoric, oxytocin, pretty much. I just destroyed my oxytocinergic system and my serotonergic system. So I had horrible anhedonia for 2 years. So for 2 years, nothing was enjoyable. Like I would get the cues and I'd have like the rational signal, like, okay, it is important to achieve things and accomplish things. But the reward response that you're supposed to get from, hitting a milestone or unlocking a new gun in Call of Duty, whatever you want to say, I didn't get that. And that sucked. But that kind of just relegated me to a life exclusively intellectual, right? Like I just didn't have any emotion or enjoyment. That made it really easy to sit down and research all day, because nothing else was enjoyable. My life was kind of ruined, and I just fixated over health. And that made me learn a lot of really cool stuff that benefited me in other areas of life. And then funny enough, I just kind of gave up. I'm like, this is ass, for 2 years, trying to figure it out and kind of trying to fix my brain. So I give up. I was living in Mexico City at the time. I go to the beach and, I shut down my agency that I had at the time. I was just like so over it. I'm like, I'm just going to be a bum on the beach. Anyway, I go and I be a bum on the beach, and about a month in, I'm out with some of my friends and, just trying to have fun, drinking mezcal. And I wake up the next morning and it's like the switch just turned off. It's like my brain turned back on. I was able to feel all of those emotions that I wasn't able to feel. That depersonalization went away. And, it was just on the up and up from there. And then I was able to kind of maintain those 2 years of just religious, rigorous research that I would have been able to do if I was mentally sane. But then, everything turned back on and life was great again. So really interesting story, but that's kind of how it was. And then ever since then, I've just continued to do it because I love it. And I think that there's, health knows no bounds.
Yeah, absolutely. A guest who was on this podcast last year, Jessica Rolano, who does a lot of work with peptides, she had a phrase that she used, which I thought was really beautiful and had so much truth in it. She said, there's no greater feeling than boundless vitality. And I think anybody that's known that to any degree will know exactly what that means and what that feels like and the truth that's in that. To be able to have no walls, so to speak, physically, intellectually, emotionally, is an incredible thing. And it should be our birthright, and it used to be our birthright. But unfortunately, the world we live in today, it's something that's taken away from a lot of people. What do you think are the main challenges? I mean, again, it's a very nuanced question, but the main challenges that, let's go with most young men are facing when it comes to not just their physical health, but their intellectual health and emotional health too.
Yeah. So, I like that you bring up all of those facets, because these problems that we face aren't just biological and they aren't just psychological, right? Those are deeply intertwined, connected. They have feedback loops that go in either direction, right? It's two-way communication. And I say this all the time because everyone's like, man, like the problem with men is that our testosterone is low, and our testosterone is low because of microplastics. And yeah, that's a factor, but we got to understand that hormones, they are a psychological game, right? Like the primary axes that govern how much testosterone your balls create starts in your brain, right? Like the HPG axis, right? Hypogonadal pituitary gland axis. So gonad axis, excuse me. So it starts in your brain, and it trickles down through your entire body. There is no disconnect. So the biggest thing that I really think that most people miss out on, especially when they get into health, is the psychological component of it, right? It's the pro-androgen lifestyle doing things that warrant you to produce more testosterone, doing things that warrant you using your biological skill points for becoming more of a man. And that's what they completely lack, right? So they can be having the grass-fed steak, whatever, they can be eating clean, they can be avoiding microplastics, but then they go and they just act like a little wimp in their like regular lives, right? Like they don't take on challenges. They don't like confront discomfort. They don't do any of these things that are going to be the real signal that say, hey, listen, like you need to produce more testosterone because the purpose of testosterone is to make yourself more resilient towards stressors and competition. So I think that's the biggest one. And you probably know that. I mean, you're a grappler, right? That's one of the reasons that I love grappling and martial arts so much, is because that restarts that primal hardwiring that says, hey, people are trying to kill me, so I need to allocate those evolutionary skill points, those biological skill points, towards being less killable, towards being more competitive, more confrontational, to increase my chances of winning. And that's what we're missing. So that is my biggest one, right? We have participation trophified every aspect of life. We have vilified what it means to be a man in a lot of senses. And I'm not trying to be like in the manosphere space. I think a lot of guys in the manosphere space, they get a hard rap justifiably because they're cringe. But if we're just looking at it, right, like these are the facts. And it's very easy to say like, oh, manosphere space is cringe by the people that have 200 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone, right? And that are living in San Francisco with pronouns in their bio, creating some tech app that's going to make us all eunuchs, you know? So I think that's kind of my logic. That's probably the biggest gripe I have, is the societal component of it, right? And the societal expectations of it. I went to a liberal arts college. It was ridiculous. Like you could not go through that college, go through all 4 years without having a 600 nanogram per deciliter decrease in your testosterone coming out, you know, essentially, they're trying to turn you all trans. Probably you can't get canceled for that anymore. It's 2025. But I think that's the biggest problem. You know, I went and I left the U.S. and I went to, you know, some countries in Mexico, where Mexico, they kind of don't have that level of political correctness. They don't have that level of emasculation, because the masculine man, the macho man, that's still a huge part of that society. And it's just a glaring difference. And as I'm there, like living that lifestyle, that's a lot more conducive to being a man, right? You know, all the stuff that's fun in nature, dirt bikes, you know, less rules and regulations. That's when it really kind of clicked. I'm like, oh my goodness, life in the US is just so emasculating in the Western world as a whole. And I think that's a huge problem.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the manosphere, because look, whenever a label gets put on something, whenever momentum gets behind something and people start building into it and creating a community around it, cringe inevitably comes with that, because you know it inevitably comes with that. You know, there's always going to be a meme created around something that's got enough momentum behind it. The manosphere exists for a reason, and it's because so many men realized they're in a world where they didn't feel as though they could be a man anymore. The daily life they were living was not one that was fulfilling their masculine needs. And again, this is all kind of like cliche things to say now, but they're cliche because they've been said enough times, because there's a whole lot of truth behind it. Men innately feel like they need to do things like fight, compete. This used to inherently be built into life, and the more mundane and safer life has become in the Western world, in places like America and Britain, the more that's been taken away from men. And obviously it's a blessing, but it has become a curse too. So it's really important that men seek out challenges. And I like the connection that you made there between the psychological and the physical. I think people often undervalue how much doing something that benefits themselves psychologically, the effect that can have on their physical well-being, you know, their testosterone levels. Like talking to a pretty girl, like going up to a girl in the grocery store, in a coffee shop, that has been shown to have a potent increase in your testosterone, a direct link. That is nothing physical you are doing other than, walking your 2 feet over there and making words come out of your mouth. That is the only physical thing you're doing. That's completely psychological. You've got to take care of the psychological in order to take care of the physical, and vice versa. Something that's really interesting to me, Noah, is your nomadic lifestyle. You said you've settled in Florida for quite a while now, but yeah, you've traveled around a great deal. What invoked that from the start? You said you grew up in Minnesota and then headed to Mexico. Talk to me about that, the kind of the motivations behind it, what drove you to do it, and what you've gained from your experiences traveling around?
Yeah, first of all, great riff on the masculinity component. Where there's cringe, there's usually truth. When it comes to the nomadic component, it's really like, I think that humans are most like, we all at one point were nomadic creatures, right? Like that's just hardwired in us. We didn't know how to sustenance farm. We didn't know how to farm. So we followed the herds, and the herds move, right? Like creatures move nomadically. They don't stay in one place. So I think that was a big factor that was always ingrained in me. I always liked like the evolutionary biology component of it. I studied abroad in Bangkok for a while, and I had a professor there, an anthropology teacher, and he just, the way that he explained everything made it very clear to me that a lot of like human problems are just maladaptations. They're manifestations of traits that no longer apply to our, undeniably artificial and, potentially toxic, if not at the least soul crushing, like environment that we're in, right? So for me, I think this is especially true for people with ADHD. It's like novelty makes you feel alive. Seeing new things and sights and smells and cultures makes you feel alive. It opens your eyes. There's nothing that like just makes my mind expand like new cultures. So knowing about that yourself, like if anyone's ever traveled and they notice about themselves, like a lot of people think that's a fluke or that makes them flighty, but that's really just like a genetic encoding that, hey, maybe, back in the day, you were the person in that tribe who was deeply hardwired to go and explore new realms, right? And that's where society and humanity really pushed themselves forward, is by that select number of people that didn't like the status quo, that didn't like staying in one place, and said, hey, I'm going to go explore what's on the other side of this mountainside. And we've actually been able to like hone that into a specific gene mutation called DRD4R7, dopamine receptor D4R/7. It's really prevalent in people with ADHD, but that just changes the way that they experience novelty. That changes the way that they experience like dopaminergic response from things. So they need that novelty and they need that newness to keep feeling fresh and essentially maintain like that level of dopamine that they need to feel like a normal human. So I think that was something that I found out pretty early on. I always just wanted to be nomadic. It just made the most sense to me. Stuff, just crushes. Like every single thing that you own takes up corresponding amount of headspace. So, I always felt so cluttered with stuff. I was like, how easy would it be if I lived out of a suitcase and just traveled and left whenever I wanted to? So I did that for 3 years, and I would not have been able to do what I do if I didn't commit to that, if I didn't create a life that enabled that. And I started working for that life before remote work became a thing. It's a lot easier now, but it completely just changes the way that you look at the world. And you see so many different contexts. I mean, if you stay in the same town that you grew up in, you will only know and understand opportunities that like people in that town have had. The internet has opened the doors to that a little bit, but once again, you got to find those crevices in the internet as well. Nothing will change your perspective on the world like traveling. I highly recommend it to everybody that's in their early 20s. My only regret is that I didn't do it earlier. I think I did it at the perfect time. I graduated college during COVID, so couldn't travel for the first year. But after that, I'm like, I'm out. It was scary. There's periods when I was really broke in the beginning, but that was the fun of it, right? That's the fun of it. That's the adventure. That's what we were talking about with the high T feedback loop, about doing things that make you scared, about doing things that make you uncomfortable. That's the best way to grow psychologically and biologically. So anyway, I did that. And then I reached a certain threshold where it's like, okay, like this moving around, it's no longer scratching that novel itch, right? Being a flagrant Peter Pan, it's no longer giving me that dopaminergic response that I want. So what's the next step? And then I kind of sat down. I'm like, well, I'm not really satisfied when it comes to like what I'm building, right? I'm focusing too much on me, on what I want, and not enough on what I want for the world and what I want for those people around me. So that kind of came to a realization, and that probably corresponded with like my frontal lobe developing more as I turned 25 and whatnot. I think that's kind of when it happened, 25 and a half. And then realizing that, okay, maybe like life isn't just going around exploring new experiences. Maybe life's about building something, and kind of just having those thoughts. And then realizing that if I continued to live that nomad life now, that would make it more difficult for me to, it would essentially almost close a door. And that door being having a place to lock in and get stuff done and build stuff and whatnot. But if I found a place to lock in now, that would keep both doors open, because by me locking in, I'd be able to create the opportunity for me to have both, right? For me to be able to build a life where I can go wherever I want, whenever I want, and have a place locked down. So anyway, that's my reason why I think everyone should be nomad. And that's also my reason why I stopped being nomad to an extent and decided to rather like try to create a world where you can have your cake and eat it too. And I think that's like everyone's heuristic. that's like what their heuristic should be. Is like a lot of people try to decide between one option or the other. But what if you could just find a way to do both? Like, what would this look like if it were easy? Is always my primary mental model, like my primary heuristic that I tell everyone to use. And yeah, I mean, it would be easy if you could have a place and then also just be nomad when you want.
I love that. What would that look like? What would this look like if that were easy? I think so many times when we get, when we start living this way of life, like you said, that high T feedback loop, we always look for the hard choice. And it's a great way, it's the way to build resilience, right? Choose the hard thing. But there's a point where that can become counterproductive, and asking yourself, like, I know like a big part of your philosophy, so to speak, is gamify things. Like, how can I make this a game? Like, how can I win this game? And I do think that's a brilliant frame, and it's something I don't do enough of myself. I take things very seriously. Everything I do, I approach with a certain level of seriousness. And I think it's a question I could ask myself more and implement more in terms of my approach to things. Like, how can I win this game? Can I do this in a way where I still get the same success rate, the same results, but go about it in a more playful and even easier way? Like, if you can get the same results in an easier manner, if you already have the ability to be resilient, the ability to persist, if you already have those in your back pocket, kind of like what we were talking about with environments, if you know how to live in a cold environment, if you've got the balls to do so, you don't always have to live in a cold environment to get those mental benefits from it. You can go and live in the tropics and have a better time doing so. So long as you know you've got that resilience in the back pocket, gamifying things, finding a more playful way to achieve the same objective, why not do that, right?
Yeah. You brought up a good point too. It's like you typically take things very seriously. And everyone's built different. Everyone's wired different. So I think what people need to do is they need to know themselves. They need to go back and look at their greatest accomplishments, look at the times in their life when they were performing the best, and ask themselves, what was their mindset going into that? So you probably look back and say, like, I had the best outcomes, right? Whether it be like in your athletic career, whether it be in your personal life, whatever it is, when I was taking things super seriously, it was all life or death, and I had no other option. When I look back, I always performed the best when I was just, like messing around, like quite literally messing around, not taking anything seriously, and being like a degenerate almost to that point. Like, I perform best when everything's a game, but everyone may not be that way. The only way to figure it out is to go back and look at, like, play archaeologist with your life and say, when did I perform the best and what was my mindset in those, like, in that setting and in that context?
Do you have any locations in particular that you would recommend young men traveling to and living in for a while? And what are your kind of top tips for people that want to try the traveling, try the nomadic thing as a young man?
Yeah. So it completely depends on what environments make you feel alive. I think all of us have like an ideal environment, and I talk about that all the time. For me, it's tropical, right? It's tropical beach and it's tropical jungle. Like, I love that, and there's nothing I love more. I really love Southeast Asia. I think Thailand's incredible. I think as a rule of thumb, avoid the touristy areas. Like, if you want the benefits of travel, don't go somewhere that's globalized and isn't like authentic, but is just a place for you to indulge in all of your hedonistic hobbies. And I think, like, it really depends. I love Mexico. I love Mexican culture. I love Mexican food. I speak Spanish, so that helps. It depends. Like, go and start becoming, I don't know, a student of geography. Like, I always just go on YouTube and I just watch videos of like different countries and different cultures. And I'm just like curious about that. So figure out which one scratches your itch and then go and do Nomad Light, right? Is there a way that you can take 2 weeks off and go there? Can you work remote and go there for a little bit? Can you just spend maybe a week there even, or a month, right? Go do Nomad Light. It's not binding. What you should do though, is you are going to have a really tough time making that leap, like, ever, right? Because everything that you love is where you live. You're comfortable there. Your gym's there. You have a bunch of stuff. What you need to start doing is slowly severing yourself from all those things that don't bring you any value, but make you stay where you don't want to be. Right? So start getting rid of stuff. Stuff is the real enemy. Just start putting it in boxes. You don't even have to get rid of it. Just put it in a box and put it in the garage, right? Only bring it out when you need to use it. embrace that minimalistic component, remove that obsession and that weird attachment you have with stuff. The only reason that people get so attached to material things is because they don't have a sense of meaning and agenda and objective and adventure in other areas of their life. So all of that energy that would otherwise go towards accomplishing things is going towards taking care of stuff, right? Oh, like washing, or like, I mean, people do it. They like even with cars, like I love stuff. I love cars. I love guns. I love all that stuff. But like, you need to be comfortable with losing all of it at any given time and not have it bind to you. That's step number one. Step number two, book the ticket, right? You have to figure everything out in 3 months or whenever your ticket is. Otherwise, you're not going to have that fire under your ass to actually make the leap. Once you actually get to the place, you need to go and make yourself a local or a regular as soon as possible. So I always tell people, find a cafe, find a restaurant, find a gym, and maybe even find a bar. Go there every single day, become friends with all of their staff, right? Know all of their names, tip them really, really fat. You have just made yourself a magnetic component of that environment. People are going to like essentially like magnate towards you because they see that you're someone that people know. And I think that's the most important thing. That makes people that are in your shoes that may feel uncomfortable, that would maybe wanting to find people, migrate towards you. So that's really the cheat code, is you just got to go to places, become a local, become a regular.
I have a friend that has traveled a great deal, and something he said to me, which again stuck with me, was he said, traveling is the greatest educator, but it's the enemy of stability, and therefore it can very easily be the enemy of progress. And he referenced this to physical training in particular, his grappling. He said when he's constantly moving around, going from gym to gym, he's not getting into that routine and building momentum in the same way as when he's in one place for 6 months to a year. He's at the same gym, he's getting to know his training partners, he's getting better rounds with them, learning how to drill with them in a more efficient way. Obviously, physical training is a great part of your life. You're in tremendous shape. How have you managed to keep that routine or so easily build a new routine as you've been traveling around? How have you been able to create that balance between the ever-changing nature of being a nomad and the stability that comes with being settled in a place?
Yeah, well, it's about the game that you play. Your friend is playing a very specialized game, right? It's a game that requires very linear progress to an end goal, which is winning whatever 80 CC or the CJI, depending on which one you like. But I'm just playing a different game, right? Like starting from the beginning, we were talking about that novelty component. That novelty component that compels you to travel is the same novelty component that compels you to try new training styles. So I've never had a real training routine. I have like training sprints or like training stints where I'll go and I'll have like different training components all as pillars or buckets, and I'll fill a certain bucket at any one time. So if I go somewhere for a month, that'll like, depending on what gyms are available, I'll be like, okay, cool. I'm going to get really good at calisthenics this month because that's kind of what I have access to. And then once I get bored, it's probably going to be the same time that I get bored of the place as a whole, go to a new place. They have a really good like functional training gym. And that new environment sparks this new motivation that makes me want to get really good at functional training in a month. So I call them training cycles, and that's really what I do. And then I just have like training foundations, right? I have like the mobility foundations, I have like the strength foundations, and I just make sure to get those in as well. But I put them at like total maintenance mode, where it's like I could literally do it anywhere. I could do it anywhere. It takes me like 1 to 2 days a week. So I think it's really about structuring that game. But if you are trying to make a linear progress towards something, it is going to be hard to do that when you're moving around a bunch. The most realistic thing is like to do slow travel and go somewhere for 3 months, right? 2 months, or even 4 months or 6 months, and lock in that chapter of your life, whatever that is. Like have an arc, we call it like winter arc or whatever it is. Have an arc in that area, in that chapter where you're focusing on that one specific thing. By the end of that arc, you're going to reach the point of diminishing returns with progress anyway. So switching up your objectives and your focus is likely going to give you that consolidation time that you need to reap the rewards of whatever your focus was in that arc. And this is a bigger idea of like cyclical living and seasonal living. We are not built to be doing the same thing and having the same routines in the summer as we are in the winter. And I take that both physically and intellectually. Like the work that I do in the winter is drastically different than the work that I do in the summer. The work that I do in the winter, it's a lot more slow, it's steady, It's kind of just, I'm more just working, honestly. But in the summer, I'm kind of just like I'm super hyper. I'm a lot more physically active. I'm doing a lot more high energy stuff. And that's how it should be. People get afraid when they stop being inconsistent throughout the seasons, but they have to realize that consistency is not meant to be year round. We're cyclical and seasonal creatures. You think bears do the same thing in the winter as they do in the summer? No, bears sleep for the whole winter. And we're not that much different than bears.
Yeah, this is something I've picked up on and realized in the past 12 months. I was disappointed with myself because I didn't have the urge or the impetus to compete as much in the summer. And then I realized I just naturally want to compete more in the autumn, in the winter. So then what I did last year was I was like, okay, rather than trying to fight that natural instinct, I just need to plan my competitive schedule around that. I need to make sure I compete more in the autumn and winter. And then the summer can be used as a more playful time with training. I don't have the pressure of feeling like I need to compete in the summer, that I need to go through the weight cuts, etc. There's something about the cold, something about the dark, which mentally makes me lock in. It is that classic cliche. Again, winter arc, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because there's a lot of truth in that. Dark, cold times make men in particular, I think, want to hunker down, lock in, and get shit done. And summer is just naturally a lighter, more playful time, hopefully, if you're able to afford for that. When you said about moving to a new place, going to a restaurant, a bar, a cafe, a gym, I think that's a great piece of advice. You've just got to throw yourself in at the deep end. For people like you and myself, that may be easier for us if we're kind of quote unquote naturally more confident. For a young man that's struggling with confidence or just doesn't necessarily have that extroverted nature about them naturally, what tips do you have for them? Are there any hacks to building confidence, or is it just as difficult as or as simple as throwing yourself in the deep end? It's like a cold plunge. There's only one way to get better at it. You've just got to jump in.
Yeah, it's simple in the same way as like chess is simple because all you have to do is checkmate someone. It's about like the game that you structure behind it. So I get it, right? Like a lot of us or some of us, we really have a no holds barred when it comes to like extroversion. Other people, they get uncomfortable, they get scared, they're not good at it. And what they're stuck in is a negative feedback loop, right? They're not good at socializing, so they never socialize. So their socializing skills suck. Then they get the impetus to go and try that. They get shut down, they get rejected, they feel awkward and embarrassed. And they're like, I'm never doing that again, right? This reaffirmed, like it's learned helplessness. I'm never going to be able to do that. But when you just lower the stakes and you realize like, hey, I'm in a new environment. No one even knows who I am, right? Like I'm from Indiana and I'm in Argentina right now. I could say the craziest shit and nothing would happen. Worst case scenario, I just move, right? Or I just go from this neighborhood to this neighborhood. Like nothing bad could possibly happen because nobody knows who I am. I am playing in sandbox mode right now. That is the first step. You just have to really understand that, realize that. Once you realize that, you can take it like everywhere. I mean, I've been living in the same place for like 8 months now and I still act like that. But that's step number one. Step number two is to accept the game that you're playing, right? You can't give up on this game, right? It's not like Minecraft where you can just start a new world. I guess it is like Minecraft where you can start a new world. You're stuck playing this game, so you might as well play it and take the gamification process, right? So instead of going out and fucking up and saying, oh, never going to do that again, go out, mess up, go back to the drawing board, identify how you messed up, identify what you learned, identify what you did well, and then go back at it again. That's how you learn. Like we know that so much when we play video games, right? Or when we grapple or whatever, like we mess up, we learn from it and we keep going. But we have this strong emotional hurt and attachment and ego when it comes to our personal life that when we mess up, it just hurts too much. You got to get away from that hurt. You got to realize it's not that big of a deal. You got to embrace the game. Know that you're going to mess up, know that you're going to fail, and then just take it as like a check on the back. Like take it like, okay, cool, I messed up. Let me go mess up 5 more times and figure out what I can learn. Like that's the key. And I take this as at a meta level. I did a little thing with my Telegram group for a while where it's like, all right, we had like an objective every day or every week where it's like, today I want you to like not move out of the way when you're walking down a street. Right? Because so many people, like they accept the role. It's like playing guard, they accept the role of playing guard. And then you start playing guard. Now you like look for guard, which not my style personally. But like they accept the role of guard player in their daily life, right? They move out of the way for, I hope you're not a guard player.
No, I'm exactly like you. So I love this analogy. It's wrestling all day. It's wrestling top pressure all day.
Yeah.
So yeah, please continue with the metaphor.
Absolutely. But it's like they've learned these traits that have made them, they've accepted whatever status they've been put in the social hierarchy, but they don't have to. And it's so easy when you gamify, right? This week, just focus on not saying sorry when you're not actually sorry. You're going to have the urge, you're going to have the inkling. You know how many people, like, someone will bump into them and they'll say sorry? You can take this to an extreme, and obviously don't do that. Don't be an asshole. But you got to understand, like, if you're stuck at that place where you're saying sorry to, like, a crow that shit on your head, you need to deprogram yourself. And the way that you do that is by slowly gamifying it, right? So go a week where you don't say sorry when you're not sorry. Go a day when you walk down the aisle, where you walk down the street and you're not moving out of the way for everybody. We're not going to do this forever. We're not going to turn you into an asshole, but you need to unlearn those skills. And the way that you do that is by actively approaching the opposite, right? Same with, like, I see it. Like, I have a younger brother as well. And this is something that I work with him on a lot because he loves video games and he isn't as extroverted as me. So, like, kind of just being able to do that process, it's crazy once you make that switch of, like, oh, I'm game, like, this is a game. I need to, like, level up. Here's how I'm going to level up. That's what you need to do. And that removes the emotional ties to it. It removes the seriousness of it because it's not a big deal. It's just a game.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's great advice. Getting comfortable with rejection is maybe one of the hardest things. And I heard of like a 30-day rejection challenge. It was something like that. And it sounds silly, but I think a lot of people would gain so much from it. I can't remember where I saw it. There was like a specific 30-day challenge where there was a different thing every day. And the whole purpose is, like, what you're being asked to do is, like, it's going to be a straight up rejection. So, like, day one is like you have to go to a coffee shop, you ask for your coffee, and then you say, can I have this for free? And, like, they're obviously going to say no. Like, you've just got to get comfortable with being rejected. And the idea is at the end of 30 days, I think, like, we've all kind of heard the statistics that it takes, 30 days of abstinence to break an addiction. On the flip side of it, if you have been rejected every day for 30 days straight, by the 31st day, you're probably going to be pretty comfortable with it. So you can then actually go for something you want that you actually have a chance at getting. And the fear of rejection isn't there, or isn't there as much anymore. So, yeah, I think getting comfortable with rejection, especially as a young man, is something that's an absolute must to being successful in whatever game you play. Let's switch over to the productivity side of things. I guess we've already kind of touched on this in terms of the balance between stability and the ever-changing nature, the novelty of being nomadic and moving around. But yeah, something that strikes me with you, Noah, is you're a very productive guy. And I think you've learned how to use your ADHD as a positive force for that. But yeah, I really want to pick your brain on it. You seem to be able to. I've consumed your content for a while. You've gone through periods where you've trained 3 times a day, and yet you're still working on your health brands. You're still doing your research, all your writing, that kind of stuff, and you're going out and having fun. Again, because I approach things so seriously, something I struggle with a lot is balance. Like, I'm so deep into training, into competing. I'm then struggling to turn off that physical switch to then dedicate myself mentally to sitting down, writing, creating content, doing my newsletter, that kind of stuff. And then when I'm doing those things, it's then difficult for me to go out, meet friends, have a good time. How do you create and get good at having a balance like that and ensuring you stay productive while still being playful?
Yeah, I mean, dude, it is a struggle. It's a struggle because even though, like, for me, as an example, like, I know that the advice that people typically give you is almost always wrong. The status quo is almost always wrong. But I still struggle with the conditioning of, like, in order to get ahead in life, you need to lock in. But for me, like, locking in just doesn't work. I just become a miserable human. Like, I perform well when I'm playing. And I know that, but, I think when it comes from a productivity standpoint, let's just start there. I do a lot. I'm not organized. I get, like, overwhelmed pretty easily unless I'm having fun, unless I like turn on and turn into this specific mode, right? Like, it's me, I forget what I call it. Just like optimized Noah versus unoptimized Noah. And those are two very, very different people. And I spent a long time analyzing and gathering data on what does optimized Noah look like and what does unoptimized Noah look like. And then I started gathering a bunch of data on what things bring out optimized Noah and what things bring out unoptimized Noah. And then I just put all of my chips into working hard to create a life that only required me to do things that turned on optimized Noah. So that was the only time that I worked hard. The only time that I worked hard was when I knew that the end result of that hard work would be a life that enabled me to just do the things that I love and do the things that I enjoy and do the things that make me want to do more work. So there's very clear things that energize you and there's very clear things that drain you. The problem is a lot of people think that they need to do the things that drain them day in and day out to get anything of substance in this world. When in reality, they need to switch from working hard to working smart. Because I know a lot of very unsuccessful people that work really, really hard, but they're working hard at the wrong things. They're climbing up the wrong mountain. Now they're halfway up this mountain. They don't want that sunk cost and they don't want to go back down and climb another one. So you need to have a no holds barred mentality. If you're working on the wrong thing, it is okay to drop it. I've dropped so many big opportunities that in the moment, myself and a lot of people as well were like, what are you doing? That's the dumbest thing ever. But if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to be living a life where I was doing things that bring on optimized Noah. So I think gathering data is first super important. Do you know the things that energize you? Because if you only do things that energize you, you will just reap so many more rewards. Your output will be so much higher. And this is kind of the logic where people kind of mess up on, right? Say they start a business and they want 100% of that business because 100% is more, right? Like they get 100% of whatever they do. But that requires them to do 50% of things that they do, they hate. And it drains them of energy. Now they don't have any energy left over for the things that they love and the things that they enjoy and the things that are their unique competitive advantage. When in reality, if they were just 50-50 partners with someone who is very compatible with them and love doing the things that they hate, then they would be able to allocate all of their time to things that energize them and just get this parabolic growth. But they don't, right? Because they have ego and they don't know themselves. So the issue is a lot of people don't know what things they're good at and what things they're not good at. And when you're doing anything, like we're collaborative people, we're a tribal species. So you need to find people that share those alternative capabilities, come together, right? Like if you have a bunch of generals on a football team, that team's going to be ass. The quarterback knows that he's a quarterback. He's not going to be trying to block, right? He's not going to be kicking field goals. He knows his role and he finds people that have compatible roles and he works with them, right? So yeah, maybe he gets 1/100th of that market cap, but he can't be that whole team of himself. Like 1/100th of a market cap, that's $100 million is significantly more than 1 million, yada, yada, yada. That's kind of the logic there when it comes to productivity and when it comes to like doing projects in general. Do stuff that you enjoy, do stuff that you're good at, and then just focus on acquiring rare and valuable skills.
Again, another really good point. I think we can be so obsessed and driven into pushing into the hard things, thinking, okay, like this is a necessary part, not a necessary evil, but you know, this is something I've got to push through in order to continue to do the thing that I love. Why make it hard if it doesn't need to be? Like there's somebody out there that thing you hate doing, they will love doing. So why not just partner up with them? And the analogy of, I want to keep, 100% of the pie. Well, you could have a pie that's like 100 times bigger if you teamed up with, a bunch of other people. And then, your slice of that pie is going to be bigger than the whole pie you would have had just grinding away by yourself. Yeah, I think we can get caught in this lone wolf mentality and forget the fact that we are a tribal species. We should be looking to build collectives wherever possible. I think there's a great deal of power and leverage in that, and it makes things more fun as well, right? Yeah. I mean, there's a certain amount of fulfillment that comes with a solo journey, and knowing you're doing it by yourself. And I do always say, at the end of the day, life is a solo journey in the sense the only constant is you at the end of the day. But there's so many people you're going to meet along the way, and to not really make the most of those relationships, those friendships, it'll be remiss at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you can do both, right? Like you can do jiu-jitsu and flag football. There's nothing stopping you from playing a team sport and an individual sport at the same time. That's the way to do it, in my opinion. Like I have a lot of endeavors that are just my endeavors, right? Like a Substack, content in general, like that's just me. that makes me a better teammate for these other programs, right? So me playing an individual sport is making me a better team player as well. Do both. We no longer live in a world where you can only have one project or one, job or career. Do both, and then find one umbrella objective. And this is actually probably the biggest alpha, and it's the biggest thing that I hone in on, is every single thing that I do feeds the other, right? Like if I was an alcoholic and a professional athlete, those would not feed one another. Actually, maybe they do. We don't know yet. Alcoholic and writer, those definitely do, but the athlete is what puts a wrench in the whole thing. So what I'm trying to say is that every single project that I take on, I vet it religiously to make sure that it benefits every single other project that I have. And if I were to lay out all the projects that I have and I was able to create the mind map, you'd be like, oh shit, this is actually just one objective. Like you really only have one job. It just so happens that you have these different nodes. So everyone looks and they're like, oh my God, you're doing so many things. Like, how are you not getting overwhelmed? I'm not getting overwhelmed because every single penny that I put into that machine feeds every single aspect of that machine. A win here equates to a win here, right? Like everything just feeds off of one another. And then I reach this flywheel where it's just going so fast because every single chip that I put in, it continues to inflate this hot air balloon. That is what I think people miss, because I know people that they'll have a job in tech and then they'll go and they'll open up a laundromat. And it's like, so every hour that you put into tech is taking away from success at your laundromat. Why not find something that complements that? What if you did tech, like you had a tech day job and then you did consulting on the side? So every single hour that you put in consulting makes you better at your day job. Every single minute that you put in at your day job makes you better at consulting. Like that's kind of the logic there. I probably should lay that out because it's very clear in my head. A lot of people you can't see the logic from the outside, but that's the secret sauce for sure.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think there's something to be said for, I think it's Viziandre, if you know Viziandre. He talks about having a unique set of skills. So rather than trying to be the top 1% in something, because that's going to be really hard to do, or the top 0.1% in an industry, work at getting into the top 5% of 5 different skills and have those be a unique blend of skills. So then you're the top dog when you join all those dots together in that kind of collective niche that you've made. You're the only person that can do that. I do think there's something to be said for that, but at the same time, they do have to feed each other to a certain degree. Otherwise, you're just you're pulling yourself too thin. It's like pulling the dough apart, and it crumbles. Right? You've got to create feedback loops in a positive way, and you've got to do things which, in some way, benefit one another. So you're not just spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah, grappling analogy here, right? It's if you what skills are you acquiring? I actually apply this to my game as well, where it's I think there's things that you're naturally good at and that you're naturally inclined at. What if you were to acquire other skills that then contributed to propping up that skill? So for me, it's I have really good back control. I just that's where I really thrive. If I get hold of someone's back, I'm just really in control there. So what if I just propped up a bunch of skills that enabled me to get into that position more and then heighten that skill, as opposed to getting my back control skill from the top 5% to the top 3%? What if I just allocated that same time to go from the top to the 80th or at 80% to 10% in those other skills, which takes the same amount of time? There is a point of diminishing returns. AI in particular, and the rapid and expansive access we have to information and data is making specialists relegated. You no longer need to be in the 1%. You no longer need to be a walking encyclopedia. Now you just need all of those generalist skills that enable you to position yourself. And this is something that I think a lot of people need to think more about, is what is my role going to be in a post-AGI world, right? Advanced general intelligence, AI, it's probably going to kill us all. But in the meantime, how can I position myself where I'm not going to be outsourced by an AI bot? Imagine all the people that just spent $300,000 going to law school and are now working 80 hours a week, only to realize that 80% of their workforce is probably going to get culled by bots. And only not the most knowledgeable people are going to stay in that position. The people with skills that AI cannot replace are going to stay in that position. What is that? That's face-to-face interaction, right? That's being personable. That's being intuitive. That's being like a pattern recognizing creature. Those are general skills. So anyway, I wanted to throw that analogy to you, but that's kind of the logic, and you hit it on the head. Don't be top 1%, be top 5% in 5 different areas.
Yeah, and continuing on that kind of channel, as you said, like navigating the best career, so to speak, in this world in which we find ourselves can be difficult. I think, like, for some people, like, if you want to be a doctor, like, you're not going to be a self-employed doctor. Like, at the end of the day, you're going to work a quote-unquote 9 to 5. You're going to have a traditional career. But for most people, for most of us, we don't want that. So I don't know if you know this. My background, I was in corporate law, did my law degree, went through law school, went into corporate law, absolutely hated it, had no time to train and compete. Basically threw that away to throw myself into training full-time. And then I'm in a position where I'm navigating, creating a personal brand, creating income streams off of that. I personally find it so difficult to navigate, again, especially balancing it with training and competing. Something that I kind of am really inspired by with you, Noah, is how you're able to kind of, again, it's very cliche, but cultivate your personal brand and services and value that you're able to provide off of that. What advice do you have for people that are looking to really do the creator thing in this day and age? What opportunities should they be looking for? What skills should they be looking to develop? And how do they go about navigating it without just falling into the trap of chronically being on social media every day, chasing views, chasing likes, and not actually getting any value back from it in return?
Yeah. Oh my God, that's a great question. You probably saw in like the DMs that we had. I missed your DMs. And like, I don't use Instagram. I don't have Instagram on my phone. I have it on an iPad, which I go on every few days. And like, I just post stuff from iCloud, repost stories and stuff like that. Because I do not, I'll start from scratch. The social media world spends billions of dollars every year in R&D and UX design to figure out how to make their platforms as addicting as possible. Before I got into Healf, I was building a cybersecurity software, a threat intelligence software, with the sole objective of making it addictive. And I read all these books. I read Hooked by Nir Eyal, and I looked into UX design for addictiveness. And then I looked up as I'm like reading that, and I'm getting notifications on my phone from Instagram. And I'm like, I've been gypped. You know, I'm the one that's been hooked here. And it made me so disgusted that I deleted all social media for a year. These things are meant to rob you of attention in the most unethical way possible. You are the product. It's the attention economy. They want to rob you of your potential. They want to rob you of your greatest asset, which is your focus. So you look at more ads and you buy more stuff and you stay on their platform. That's all that they care about. And you cannot let that happen. So you need to make a very strong schism and say, hey, listen, I am not a consumer. I'm a creator. I'm drawing that line. I am using this platform. Read Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Watch some of his podcasts. You are a consumer or you are a creator. You use these tools for this utility and nothing else. So when it comes to actual use, like I said, I don't have any social media on my phone. I did just get a second phone, which I now have social media on. But even on that phone, I have an app called OneSec. I have to wait like 10 seconds before accessing the app every time I use it. And then every morning when I use it, I have to write like 3 things that I'm grateful for, what my objective is for the day, what's going to make today a good day. Every evening, if I want to use it, I have to write 3 more things. It makes using it a pain in the ass. And it makes me very intentional and deliberate with my social media usage. Otherwise, I get hooked. And I'm going to be honest, like I'm really good at it. And social media has still completely destroyed my ability to focus. I have a daylight computer now, which is like a no blue light, no distraction computer. I highly recommend it. I love it. But I think even at a greater level is a lot of people, they want to become creators for the sake of being creators. That is their skill, right? Like that's what they focus on. See, you're not a creator. Like you are a guy with a really cool story with a lot of skills, ex-lawyer, now doing jiu-jitsu. You've got a cool thing to tell. You are a cool person outside of social media. A lot of people, they put all of their chips into just being cool on social media. That is their skill. They have no skills. They have no assets, and it bleeds through. Right? People are becoming more and more sophisticated. And more importantly, even though somebody may not consciously know that you're full of shit and that you really aren't much, they subconsciously know that. And you see it a lot with creators that they start creating a platform and they get a bunch of followers and they speed run that whole thing. And then they immediately go around and they start selling, courses on how to do that. And they completely pivot their personal brand They pretended to be really passionate about something, only to realize like, hey guys, it's a bit. You were the currency. Thank you for paying me. Now I'm going to sell you a course on how to do the same. So I think that stuff's really disingenuous. There's no longevity in that. Everybody that does that is going to fizzle out, and they won't have any real followers. You have to ask yourself, what are you doing it for? I think the reason that, I post on Twitter, and I've been able to grow pretty steadily on Twitter, but what I appreciate more than my growth is that like I have people that trust me. I have people that trust me because from the beginning, I made it very clear that I'm never going to post things that don't align with what I want to post. The second you start doing that, the second you start posting for other people, you lose that connection with your voice. You lose that thing that makes you want to get up in the morning and post. It becomes a game that you shouldn't be playing, and it becomes a chore. So I never let myself post anything that was like engagement bait. A lot of people, they just be like, oh, I posted a video about seed oils and it got 1 million views. So I'm going to make my entire brand seed oils. They're going to burn out. They're going to resent themselves. They themselves are going to feel the cringeness of what they're doing because it's inauthentic, and they're not going to have any longevity. Avoid that at all costs. Focus on posting what you want to post. It doesn't matter what the engagement is. And then also don't rush to monetize. I was broke for a while on purpose, right? Because I had businesses that I didn't really enjoy, but were making me money. And I'm like, I would rather not have money than do that. A lot of people, I don't think they can do that. I don't think that they can have the foresight to play the long game. But if you do that, you will create a brand that is so much more reputable than anybody else, that is so much more authentic and in line, as long as you don't chase distractions and cash grabs. Distractions and cash grabs are short-term thinking. They show an inability to think long-term, and they will destroy the very thing that you're trying to pursue, right? Which is a platform. So I think those are some of my advices as like more specific heuristic. Post like you would send something to an individual, right? That's how you make it as authentic as possible. I always say tweet like you DM. Every single tweet that I post is something that I would DM somebody, right? And oftentimes my best performing tweets are things that I take directly from Q&As from my Substack. I'm not even joking. My best performing tweet in the last probably year has been something that I literally copy pasted from a Q&A, and there's a lesson in there. So anyway, that's my rant on that. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant, and I very much agree. My Instagram blew up immensely last year, and I did it was mainly from a word of the day series I did, and it was February last year. I decided I want to expand my vocabulary, so I'm going to learn a new word every day. Why not post it? So I did that. It started to blow up, and I was like, okay, this is bringing in loads of followers, so I'll continue to do it the next month and the next month and the next month. I basically did this then for over 6 months, past the point where I was really bothered about expanding my vocabulary anymore. And what it had done is it had brought in a lot of followers, but then these followers weren't here to see the highlights of the jiu-jitsu comp I did last weekend. They weren't here for, my philosophical insights or, what I had to say about nutrition or any of this other stuff. And I basically realized I've got to cut it off, which is like the most counterintuitive thing when you first think about it. Like, this is bringing in a lot of growth. This is what every social media guru is telling you, you need and what you should be pursuing. You need to niche down. And if I was going to listen to a social media guru, I would have stopped posting about everything else and just made it kind of like a self-improvement, improve your vocabulary, learn to better your English kind of page. But I wouldn't have enjoyed that in the slightest, because that's not what I was going for. I was just sharing my curiosity, sharing a project I was working on personally. But then once that had run its course, there was no fulfillment in me continuing to do that. So I decided to do it. And as a result, I've lost followers. My following's decreasing. But like you said, at the end of the day, I don't think people, as counterintuitive as it is, I don't think people should be chasing growth for certain. And even engagement, like, yes, engagement over growth. But even that has a limiting factor. Like, if you're constantly looking for engagement, people are saying, oh, I'd rather have, 10,000 followers that really engage with what I'm doing over, 1 million followers that don't. Yeah, okay, like, that's ideal out of those scenarios. But then even if you've got a smaller cultivated community, if you feed too much into trying to keep them engaged versus what you're actually curious about, what you want to share, you're still playing a game that's not going to really fulfill you at the end of the day. that's the conclusion I've come to myself. When it comes to social media, you need to be a creator and you need to create things for you, from you, and for you. Social media should really just be sharing what you're doing in your real life and not kind of. Andrew Huberman's actually got a really good saying about this. He says, bring your real life to social media, don't bring social media to your real life. And I think that's a great way to think about it. And I think at the end of the day, we can get caught up into thinking, oh, the more I grow or the more engagement I get, like the more money I can get, and like the more money I get, the more freedom I have. But really, social media just needs to be a platform for you sharing your journey. And if people are inspired by that and engage with that, great. And if they don't, halas. But at the end of the day, if you're authentic and you continue, if you're consistent and authentic with what you do, you will grow and people will engage with what you're doing because they're going to resonate with it.
Smart. Yeah, I commend you for that, right? You've got balls, brains, and integrity. A lot of people don't, and a lot of people on social media don't. Never listen to gurus either, because gurus only care about one thing. They care about testimonials. They want you to say, oh, I went from 0 to 10K in 20 days by posting my perineum on the internet, right? Like if you want engagement, right, go, I don't know, run through a football field. Like that really is the hurdle that most people can't get over, is saying that, hey, I'm going to go and do this for myself. I'm an individual. I have the confidence and I have the balls to just want to post my own thoughts and do what I want to do. And if you want to follow me, yeah, sure, do that. If you don't, go follow somebody else. You don't want to become a circus act. A lot of people that create content on the internet become a circus act. I mean, in reality, like the purpose of the internet is to express your genuine ideas with the most reach possible. So that's really what it is about. At the end of the day, it's about people following you for you, not following you for whatever it is that they like in the first place, right? A vocab of the day. So that is the hurdle most people can't get over. But man, when you do that, like that's why I'm not a consistent guy at all. I've never been able to be consistent in anything. I've consistently posted on the internet every day for like the last 2 years. And the reason that I was able to do that is because I just made it as frictionless as possible, because I only post what I'm interested in and I know no bounds, right? I'm starting to post about like how I'm prepping for grid shutdown. That has nothing to do with mitochondria, right? But the ability to essentially cultivate a group of people that know who you are and that like feel like you're friends on the internet, like that's where the real magic happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's the frame I'm using as I continue to go down this social media thing. We're almost out of time. We'll have to do another one because there's so much I wanted to talk to you about on the physical training side of things, protocols for mental clarity, mental energy, that kind of thing. But I think a good pertinent point to finish on today would be, and if you can't kind of narrow it down to 3, however many is appropriate. But if you could give us kind of like your top 3 tips, please, now for people that want to be quote unquote cliche successful creators in this day and age. Do you have like a top 3 skills that you think people should master if they want to be nomadic, they want to be able to earn a remote living, so they have the freedom to travel about, to be playful, to do all the things that we've talked about today?
Yeah, first one's acquire rare and valuable skills, right? There's a lot of skills that are valuable now, but they're not rare, So acquire skills that are unique to you, right? That really only you can probably be good at because of your unique proclivity. They become easy to you. So you work hard at the things that come easy to you. That's number 1. Understand the attention economy. Understand this new digital marketplace. A lot of people, they don't have the creative capacity to identify how to monetize what they're doing, right? Like they think the only way to make money on the internet is to sell a course, but that's just so not true. So become more creative. I think that's number 2. And then number 3 is learn when to get off the vehicle that you're currently on. Learn when it's not, like when the vehicle is no longer serving you. So for my context, like I had an agency and I knew when I ran that agency that this was not going to be the thing that was going to take me to the next level. So my objective with that agency was to create the 4-hour work week. I just wanted it to support me enough where I could go and I could travel where I want and live where I wanted and focus on the things that really move the needle. Now, most people, when they get in that position, they might go and be like, oh, I'm making money from this. Let me go and work 40 hours a week. Let me go from 4 hours a week to 10 hours to 20 hours. But now they just created a life where they now have 5 bosses instead of 1. And now they're working 60 hours instead of 40. So keep the end in mind. Be very clear about what your objective is. And just avoid cash grabs. Avoid quick cash. Those are distractions. Focus on the mission. Those are probably the 3.
Yeah, I think those are brilliant, and I couldn't agree more with them. Noah, thank you very much for coming on, having this conversation, sharing everything that you did. For people that weren't following you before this, that want to hear more from you, where can they go?
Noah Ryan Co. I post mainly on Twitter, and then I do most of my writing on my newsletter, www.noahryan.co.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Noah.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.